There's been a lot of concern about how small Kepler was going to be as a destination, but I think the Bungie livestream from yesterday did very well in the way of dismissing a lot of these fears. But I still think Bungie is holding some cards that they could have spoke about more. First one is that it seems like the campaign, whilst utilising the Kepler location, seems like it will be a separate segment as we've come to expect with new campaigns. But something that caught my attention was them talking about the campaign difficulty and the subsequent world tiers. I was originally under the impression that there would be normal and legendary like we know, and then maybe a master. No. I was completely wrong. There is hero, legendary, fabled, and mythical. 4 different difficulties with its own reward tiers, and it was suggested that if you're aiming for tier 3 and 4 rewards, you'll need to be pushing for mythical. What piqued my interest the most though was that they said there will be different missions on Kepler depending on the world tier. So not only is the destination going to change with what's active on Kepler, the routes can change, the mission can change, and the enemies can change. To me, this sounds like they've effectively made a living map. Okay, that might be exaggerating a little bit, but it sounds fucking great. But despite this, I'm still wondering where the tier 5 gear will come from, and this sort of got answered for me a bit later in the stream when they were showing off something else I was excited for, which was the portal, and it has a hell of a lot of customization. Kind of feels like old school Halo when you enable schools to change how it plays, but this time you get rewarded better for it. But this is where I saw ultimate difficulty lurking at the bottom, just below Grandmaster. Bungie has actually made a difficulty that is harder than Grandmaster. The only thing I'm going to say is I hope they figured out how to balance GM so you don't get punted into oblivion after 3 hits, but easily the best thing about the portal is that it makes all previous content relevant. Finally! For the past 2 years, I've elected not to bother running an Empire hunt because the only benefit you could get was completing a bounty. But now it doesn't matter what activity you run, your weapon tier reward will reflect the difficulty you've set, so everything is rewarding now, which is fantastic. There is also changes to power that have me sitting on the fence a bit, but I understand why they've been done. First is that artifact power is no longer a thing, and it's solely just gear power now. Whilst I am a bit off with this because that means your XP won't contribute to your Guardian power anymore, I do understand that this will make balancing for the power levels a lot easier. Something else that had me scratching my head was the fact that they've done away with upgrade modules and changed it to unstable cores when it comes to infusing gear. The reason I'm confused about this is because it seems like you could just take the upgrade modules and then use them as the material anyway, like we've been doing forever. But the only thing that really makes sense to me is that there was probably a problem to do with the upgrade modules and how they would pull over to using the new gear. So this is probably why they've made the unstable cores, which is now just a replacement. Something that I am really happy about is their approach to power going forward, and that is when you do a new season, instead of us all climbing to silly numbers like it's 2020 right now, all gear gets reset down to 200, so the climb to 500 starts again. So basically every single DLC going forward will have this reset, and it's a level playing field again, and I think that is going to be the best way forward if Destiny wants that happy medium with player retention, and also it being inviting to new players. But let's talk about one final thing. I have a strong suspicion that Bungie has made its first world event. They were trying to address how Destiny players were rightfully calling out the lack of content being shown, and in an attempt to alleviate concerns, they mentioned that there is now a new activity, but it's not a strike. It's a 3-person match-made event with horde mode mechanics and technical mechanics, but there's also a timer involved. It was also described as something similar to the Wellspring. So the only 2 ideas that I can think of that would sound right to me would be a world event that opens periodically that allows players to matchmake onto the node, or this will be an activity where there is a wipe mechanic that players will need to continuously push back by doing some other technical mechanic. And my suspicion about how this ties into Kepler and why they're not revealing too much is probably because it's got something to do with the time travel implication that is heavily hinted about in the reveal trailer. But yeah, I think Bungie actually hit this quite nicely, revealing just enough new things, recapping the stuff we already know, and tying it nicely together so that players can see their direction and thinking more clearly. So whilst I may still be dreading Armor 3.0 and Edge of Fate, the content and the changes that have been presented so far is more than enough for me to give it a chance. There's also the fact that I've agreed to do a day 1 raid, but the point is that I'd be willing to give it a chance even if I hadn't. So well done Bungie, you've sucked me in again, and I sincerely hope Kepler is way bigger than it seems as you keep implying. Just for the love of God, remove the weapon stat and then remove the seasonal boost for new season gear, and we've possibly got a home run.